Hello everyone, welcome back to Wandering with Jenny. Today we are going to talk about 5 amazing days in Iceland and why you need to do it in November. Okay, so before we even get started with the planning and the itinerary, we need to talk about what to wear while in Iceland. So a couple of things that you need to make sure that you pack are have proper boots. This is by far probably the most important thing that you're gonna have. You wanna make sure that your feet stay dry, warm, and comfortable. You do not need to go out and buy a big old pair of boots like these. I got these ones because I live in Canada, so I know that they're going to stay in use pretty much 4 months out of the year. So I don't mind spending a little bit of money on them. But you can get yourself a really good pair of hiking boots or winter boots for much less. Okay, next up is the outer layers. So you want to make sure that you have a really good coat. Next up is winter pants. So again, you want to make sure that they're windproof and waterproof. So probably the most important thing that you're going to have to wear underneath your clothing is a base layer. Now, I highly suggest a merino wool. This will keep you so warm. Make sure that you have something that's at least 70% merino wool. Next thing is protecting our fingers. So I had got another pair of gloves from Amazon because I was trying them out and I absolutely loved them. Next up, the hat, the good old hat, the toque, we call it here in Canada. But again, something that you definitely want to make sure that you keep your head warm there. Now, one thing I want to talk to you about, if you are going in November or any of the winter months, you maybe want to invest in crampons. So these are them. They are cleats that go underneath your boot. And what it does actually is it keeps you from slipping and falling. Now, if you're going to be walking around Reykjavik in the winter, this is something you definitely want to invest in. It does get very icy there, so you definitely don't want to end up on your keister. Okay, so I think the main thing when you are dressing to go to Iceland in the winter, or even in the spring and fall, it's actually quite cool there. It is very windy. So the number one thing you want to do is make sure you keep yourself dry and keep yourself warm. So winter layers, make sure they're waterproof, make sure that they're windproof, and you will stay actually very, very warm while you're there. Okay, so now that we've got all the serious business out of the way, let's talk about planning. I love planning. It is my favorite thing to do in the entire world. But when it comes to Iceland, it can be pretty expensive if you don't plan things out correctly. So food is very expensive, fuel is very expensive. The tours, I would say, are probably more average price, and hotels are actually they're average priced as well. But one of the things that I wanted to do was that I still wanted a little bit of free range. So I did do some tours, but I also rented a car. So when you fly in to Iceland, you're about an hour and 10 minutes from downtown Reykjavik. So in order to get there, you're gonna have to either take a cab, a bus, or your car rental. So to rent a cab to go from the airport to downtown Reykjavik, you're looking at about $150 to $200 US, which is, for me, that's just absolutely mind-blowing. But you can also take a public bus, which is about, I think, $15 US, which is bus number 55, I believe. We went with the car rental option. We didn't actually use it for the first, probably, other than getting to downtown Reykjavik, we didn't really use it for the first couple days. So on day 1, there are so many amazing things to see in Reykjavik. And if you stay at a good hotel, we had stayed at Slava Apartments, I think it's called, which I'll show you here on the map. It's pretty much downtown and it's central to everything. This apartment was so freaking cute. It was in an awesome location. The only thing I didn't like about them was that there was not a lot of communication. So this is a self check-in. So they give you a key code to get into the building and a key code to get into the apartment. The communication was quite awful, but aside from that, it truly was a perfect place. It really was. And from there, we got to go to all the different places and everything was in walking distance. So we didn't need the car. The Sun Voyager was probably one of the bigger things that I actually wanted to see down there. It is a sculpture that's right on the waterfront. It's described as a dream boat or an ode to the sun. It is absolutely stunning. The workmanship that's put into the sculpture is incredible and a must-see. This is also a great place to check out the Northern Lights, which we will talk about later on. So next up is this stunning, absolutely stunning cathedral. I am not even going to try and say the name of this because I will butcher the crap out of it. It's down below. This is probably one of the bigger landmarks in Reykjavik. I'm sure you've seen it on Instagram, anything really, and pretty much anybody that's ever gone to Reykjavik will talk about this church. It is 73 meters high. It is absolutely stunning, and you can hear it all over the city when the bells go. Beautiful and absolutely gorgeous at sunrise. Definitely check this out as one of your first stops. So if you are standing in front of the church and you look directly in front of you at this street name, again, not going to try butchering it, there is Rainbow Street, probably one of the most colorful streets that you're going to see in Reykjavik. This area is filled with some amazing shops, little cafes, any type of little shopping that you want to do. This is a perfect location to do it. So now another thing to think about when you're going into Iceland is how expensive the food is. So if you are planning on doing some budgeting and you don't want to eat out all the time, the best place to do your grocery shopping is the grocery store called Bonus. You'll notice it by the pink pig that's in the window. So day 2, we decided to do a tour. It was my birthday. I didn't feel like driving that day. And one of the tours that I actually really wanted to do was a snorkeling tour. Now I chose my tours with Arctic Adventures. They are amazing. This is not well, it's kind of a shout out to them, but this is not promoted. I paid full for the tour and I highly recommend it. The guides were absolutely amazing. So we did the snorkeling with the Golden Circle. The Golden Circle you can do on your own when you rent a car, and if you're not into snorkeling, I would suggest doing it. The area is very well maintained. It is very popular in Iceland, so the roads are quite good if they do get snow or anything like that. But the snorkeling in Silfa was absolutely amazing. Here's a short video of some of the things that we've seen while snorkeling in between two tectonic plates. Okay, so next up for this day is the Golden Circle, which is probably one of the biggest tours and probably the most visited areas in Iceland, and for good reason. It is absolutely amazing. So the first stop, if you do the snorkeling tour, the first stop that you're going to hit is this national park. Now this is a big area that is huge to the Icelandic people, and for good reason. This is where they held their first parliament meeting. This area here, you're going to be walking in between beautiful stone cliffs. You take a small walk down this cute little path. You're going to get a couple little viewing areas. It's a really nice start to the rest of the tour. Next up is probably one of the biggest things, attractions that actually brings people to Iceland, and that is the geyser. Now the original geyser, the big boy, it no longer is active. It's dormant now. So, but there is a smaller one that still does go off about every 15 or 20 minutes, I think. Maybe it was 25, I'm not 100% sure, but it is still active. It's not as big as the other one, but it still does put on a pretty good show. And the last stop on this one is Fossfoss waterfall, which is stunning. It is so freaking beautiful. Be prepared, it is so windy, as you can see here. Okay, day 3 is our road trip day. This day is going to be filled with waterfalls and black sand beaches, and it is going to be an amazing day. Okay, first stop is Seljalandsfoss. If I did not pronounce this right, I am so sorry. This is probably one of the more iconic waterfalls in Iceland, as it's one of the ones that you actually get to walk behind. Now, if you're lucky, in November, the pathway behind won't be iced over and you'll still be able to walk through. Again, if there's a little bit of ice, make sure you have your crampons with you. You may need them. But this experience is incredible. The water gushing over top of you. It is absolutely breathtaking. Now, I'm not going to try and even pronounce this one. I think it's Fossfoss. I'm going to put the name here. It's not far away. It's about maybe a 10 or a 15-minute hike. It's inside a really small canyon. I got about halfway and realized that my boots probably weren't as waterproof as they said they were. So I ended up getting in, taking a couple of different pictures, and then walking back out. There are stepping stones, but in a certain area, those don't exist anymore. So, but it is absolutely stunning. And if the water's not that high, it's a perfect area to go and check out. It's a little hidden gem. The next stop is just a small little pull off. It's this place called Drangiren. And again, I could be butchering it, so here is the name of it. This place just, so one of the things that I was reading up on in Iceland is that they have stories of elves, and this was just one of those cute little places that just looked like a place where elves would live. This little tiny home thing in the middle of this rock. It's absolutely cool, and it's definitely a must stop on the trip. So next up is Fossfoss. Again, one of the most iconic waterfalls in Iceland, and for good reason. This waterfall, you can't walk behind it. However, it's about 80 meters wide and drops down about 60 meters. This place is busy, so be prepared, but it is absolutely stunning. It is so beautiful. There's a small trail, a stairway that you can go to the top to get an overview. Jody did it, I did not. Okay, next up is Black Sand Beach. This is going to be one of the last stops on this day. Again, with the short daylight hours, there's not a whole lot that we can see in one day. But before we even talk about this beach, I have to give you a warning. This beach can be very dangerous. The waves here are quite large. There have been so many people who have been swept off their feet and injured, and I'm pretty sure some people have actually lost their lives here. So you at all times want to make sure that you are keeping your eyes on the water at all times. Now, before you leave here, make sure you go into the little cafe. It's a little pricey, but grab yourself a coffee and hit the restrooms, because we're going to have a couple of hours drive before we hit our hotel. So we stayed at the Foss Hotel Lagoon, which was, it's a newer hotel, and it is beautiful and totally perfect and in a great location for your next day adventure, which is we're going hiking on a glacier. Okay, so today we are doing ice caving and glacier hiking. This is another tour that I did with Arctic Adventures, and I so highly recommend it. With this tour, you arrive at the lagoon, which is like the glacier lagoon. You get into this gigantic van with these ginormous monster tires. So then you take this off-roading vehicle, you go up to the glacier, you do a small hike, you get your crampons on, and then we're going to make our way up the ice glacier. The great thing about this adventure is not just about the ice caves. There's these incredible little cracks, and you get to venture down into them. Do yourself a favor and drink some of that water. It is probably the purest water ever. It is so absolutely wonderful. It's so good. It tastes amazing. Then you're going to make your way down into the caves. So as you're going through this cave system, take in how the light goes through. It is so absolutely beautiful. So as you can see, it is perfect. It is an absolutely amazing tour to do. And it's kind of a little bit of an anger management thing there too. If you had any frustrations during your vacation, like the stressful drive we did the day before, you can take it out on the ice. So now that we're done the tour and we've made our way back, be sure to go to the other side of the parking lot where you can actually take a look at all of the glaciers and the chunks of ice that are forming in the lagoon. This will bring us to our next spot, but before we go there, I have to tell you one of the most amazing experiences. If you go here, you need to go to this little bus and you need to get yourself some lobster soup and a hot dog. These are two things that everybody recommends in Iceland, and for good reason. And here it's like almost half the price of what it is in Reykjavik. So if you want to try the lobster soup and the hot dog, this is where you need to do it. And trust me, you will not be disappointed at all. Okay, so inside the glacier lagoon, you've seen all of those chunks that have broken away from the glacier. Now, our next stop is Diamond Beach. And the reason it's called Diamond Beach is because all those little pieces that are washing out their way as they're making their way out to the ocean, they actually get washed back up onto the beach, and you get this. Now, if you're lucky like we were and the sun peeks out, this is so pretty. It is so pretty. But again, this is another area where you need to watch the water or you're going to end up wet. So that day has pretty much come to an end. The sun is probably almost coming down and we are going to start making our way back west towards the airport. But before we get there, there's one more spot that you can stop on your way back, and that is the mossy lava fields. It's a cute little area just to pull off, give your legs a little bit of a stretch, and then make your way back west. So now before we get to the last day at the Blue Lagoon, I want to talk to you about one of the reasons why I chose Iceland in November, the Northern Lights. Probably one of the biggest things that brings people to Iceland in the winter is the Northern Lights. Now there are a couple of different ways that you can see the Northern Lights. You can do it on your own or you can do it on a tour. Jody and I took fate into our own hands. I had done a lot of research and joined a few groups. There's also an area or a website that you can go and look at, and it'll give you what the ratings will be from 1 to 5, I believe, on what the predicted Northern Lights are going to be for that night. The Northern Lights are amazing, and the day that we had arrived, it was a 5, and I couldn't be more ecstatic. 5 means that it's high, it's very active, and the likelihood of us seeing them actually in the city of Reykjavik was still pretty high. Made our way down to the Sun Voyager, and we sat there for about 45 minutes and didn't see a single thing. And then I remembered that there was a posting from the night before or 2 nights before about someone doing it from this lighthouse, which I'll put here on the map for you. It's another little area that's not so much, there's not so much light pollution there. So the main thing is to get, if it's a lower number, you want to get outside of the city. You want to get away from the light pollution. But if you are seeing high numbers, the likelihood of you seeing in the city are still pretty high. So for our last night, we decided to stay at Baki Apartments, which is just south of Fossfoss. This is about an hour from the Blue Lagoon. The price was really reasonable. I think we paid about $120 for the night. And again, this was another spot that we actually got to see the Northern Lights. It was not as bright as it was in Reykjavik, but it was still amazing to see Northern Lights not once but twice in 5 days. So it was pretty fun. So the next day you're gonna get up. This was our last day. We were flying out in the afternoon, so we decided to book the Blue Lagoon. Make sure you go on and make your reservations ahead of time. We booked it for early in the morning. The reason I did this is because, one, I wanted as much time there as I could, and two, I actually wanted to see what it looked like at nighttime, and it was pretty amazing. And I was kind of hoping to see the Northern Lights while I was there, but we didn't have that luck. However, the Blue Lagoon, there are 3 different packages that you can choose from. So the first one is comfort. This will give you entrance into the lagoon, a face mask, a towel, and 1 drink. The second one is the premium, which is what we did, which includes your entrance, a towel, a robe. It gives you 3 masks, which were absolutely amazing. I ended up buying some. And the third one is the luxury retreat spa one, a little bit over my price range, but I definitely recommend at least going up to the other one. It's more incredible in person than it is in your pictures and your videos. The lagoon is quite big, so even though it looks like it's packed in all these pictures, which I'm sure is probably your midday stuff, but if you go early in the morning, there's not a lot of people there. And if you really want to get up early, make sure you book yourself in the first spot. So this video is about why you needed to come to Iceland in November. And it's for the Northern Lights, and the lagoons, and the waterfalls, and the glaciers, and the ice caves. There's so many things that you can do here in the winter. Even if it's not November, if you go there in the summertime, you're still going to have an amazing experience. The people, the culture, everything about Iceland is the reason why I was so happy to make that choice. If you've been to Iceland, tell me your favorite spot that you went to and why in the comments below. And of course, if you haven't already, be sure to like and subscribe. And if you think anyone's going to benefit from this, make sure you share with your friends and family. Bye everyone.